Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
How's it going, Mets and baseball fans? Thank you all so much for chiming in for the latest live stream here on WardyNYM. I like to give a fair warning. I apologize, guys, if I sound a little stuffed up or just, a little different than what I normally do. I am dealing with a cold as we speak, including a sore throat. So, of course, it happens right around the day that I have to do this live stream, but we got to get this out. A lot of breakdown regarding the New York Mets managerial search that's moving fast. We're going to be breaking down all the individual candidates at this point. Also going to rehash the video we did earlier today regarding who looks like the Mets' favorite early on in this managerial search for the position. So we'll be going through the candidates one by one, everything you guys need to know about them, and so much more. Was the likelihood, unlikelihood of them potentially landing in Queens, while also taking questions and just going through everything with all the latest with the Mets regarding this search. But before I go any further, I just want to say thank you all so much to everyone for chiming in, guys. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you're watching this live or on replay. We're less than 100 subs away from 12K already on the channel, so thank you so much for that. And also make sure to check out the previous video, a couple videos ago on the channel, in which we are doing a giveaway this Friday for a Max Scherzer jersey and black Mets hat. All you guys got to do is check out that video in order to enter. But I see Andre, Eli, Boogie, John, Christopher, Ryan, Kim, Mets cards and more, Lefty, Newbie, Anthony, Joseph, Andre, Thomas, great member and friend on the channel, Anthony, Felix, Dave, great friend and subscriber on the channel, Mets Nation, Elliot, how's it going, my man? Daniel, Joe, Tolerant Llama, how's it going? Great member on the channel. Darren, I hope you feel better, my man. Happy to have you in the stream again. Hope you feel better from the flu. Thank you so much for being here, no less. But I saw you in my Rangers stream yesterday as well. Jay Boogie, Mike, AB, Gerald, great member on the channel, Andrew, Frost, Smart. Thank you guys all so much for first chiming in, folks. Kish, all you guys really appreciate it. Like I said, we have a lot to get into. Mama Worm, hope you're having a great night. Thank you for being here. But guys, let's just dive in. We have a lot to get into, folks, in regards to this managerial search. I'm really, really excited to get into this one. So again, thank you for being here. Now let's dive right in. So like I said, I'm not sure if you guys, if you're watching this live or on replay, have seen my video from earlier today. Make sure you do. If you haven't already, though, it's definitely holds true with this live stream. But again, I will expand on that once more and go into it a little bit further. We have a lot to get into, though. Not so much about anything regarding off-season rumors or stuff like that. We will be doing those in other live streams throughout the off-season. But as we know, we're in a lockout, unfortunately, which means that it's pretty hush-hush right now. We'll get into different live streams on different topics for sure. But right now, the talk of the town is this managerial search, and there is a lot going on with it in a very short period of time. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I'm happy to have you on the channel. You're new here. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the live stream. Baseball, Tremont, all you guys, appreciate you guys immensely for first chiming in. So I want to first start off the live stream by acknowledging something that transpired a couple of days ago, and that was by a Mets legend being inducted finally, long overdue, into the Hall of Fame for the MLB's class of 2022. That being Mr. Hodges, who wasn't just a great player, but was also a fantastic manager for the New York Mets, helping them win their first championship as a club. So shout out to Hodges and his family. As we know, he's no longer with us, but to his family and everyone, this has been long overdue. So I'm so happy to see it happen for his family and for himself. I'm sure he's looking down, smiling. Again, it's something that, while I definitely haven't agreed with a lot of the voting that's been going on in regards to the MLB Hall of Fame, something that I wholeheartedly agree with is seeing Mr. Hodges in there. So shout out to him. Very, very happy to him. And Kim, you're going to get a quick kick out of here if you keep it up. No tolerance for that. I told you, this is months old. Don't be doing that stuff. Kyle, how's it going? Great member on the channel. Thank you for being here. Yes, just very, very happy for that. And it's really fitting, too, that we're doing a managerial type discussion. And we get to start things off with Hodges getting himself into the Hall of Fame for the MLB for 2022. So it's kind of fitting, start with the old. So we're out with the old, and now we're talking about the new. And what is the new? The new is this Mets managerial search that's been, extensive, but thankfully it doesn't look like it's anything like the present baseball operations and or GM search, as a lot of you guys have been aware of as well. Steven, thank you all so much. Let's see, Zevi, all you guys. And like I said, I'll be answering questions throughout the live stream and towards the end for more of an open Q&A if you're watching this live, folks. But to really put you guys up to date before we get into each individual candidate, because that's going to take up the bulk of the conversation in today's live stream, I figured let's just do it through a live stream versus a normal video or something, because the amount of information that I have and that I really want to break down for you guys is far more than I think what a normal video can do justice of. So before we get there, though, let's talk about what has built up to this point. There's been a lot of reports over the past 24 to 48 hours, folks. And again, help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal in the stream, folks. If we get 300 likes by the end of the stream, that'd be really appreciated, or at some point. Always means a lot, guys. I saw you change your YouTube photo to Scherzer. That's awesome. I'm very hyped for him as well. But starting off, let's talk about interviews. The Mets have already begun their interview process. Yesterday, there was at least 1 or 2 interviews that going on, including Brad Ausmus, that we'll be getting into, of course, as one of the reported candidates. And there were at least 4 interviews going on that are expected to go on starting today throughout the rest of the week. The Mets have 6 reported candidates that we'll be getting into. But before we even go there, there was a lot of controversy that happened in a very short period of time a couple days ago. And that was because of the fact that a report came out that, yes, the Mets, in their preliminary discussion before making their wholehearted list on who they want to interview for their managerial position, names like Curtis Granderson and, yes, David Wright came up in those discussions, which tells you a couple things. It tells you, one, there is a wide variety of people that are potentially having impact and say in this search on who could potentially be interviewed and at least be considered. And 2, it also was died down right after it was reported, saying that Curtis Granderson, doesn't look like he's going to be getting an interview to begin with. He was just a name along with David Wright that came up in consideration. So I know a lot of people were excited when those reports first came out, but I do just want to say, do not expect Curtis Granderson or David Wright to have a coaching position with the Mets in 2022. Could they potentially have an impact in the organization in the future? For sure. But this is something that I would not bank on whatsoever. Again, just because they have those discussions does not mean that anything else came of it. And there's nothing to indicate from reports right now that anything further has transpired. And in a similar notion, the same can be said with former longtime, and yes, I mean longtime manager for the San Francisco Giants and Bruce Bochy. His name was originally thrown out there. I originally saw from Pat Ragazzo, who does a great job covering the Mets, an affiliate through Sports Illustrated. I referenced him in my video earlier today on Showalter, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. But Pat, a couple days ago, broke down how Bochy is one of multiple people that the Mets have interest in, but it doesn't look like that he is actually on their solidified list. And I don't think that Bochy is going to find himself as a manager in the MLB again either, because he seems very comfortable in his position with San Francisco. It's where his family is where he managed for how many years now? It's ridiculous. And now has been working, I believe, in the front office for them since he's been done as manager. So Bochy, I don't see going anywhere. I know that there are people that were excited about the notion about Bruce Bochy potentially being fit. Maybe we will see him get an interview, but as of now, from all that I've seen and gathered to this point, it doesn't look likely whatsoever. So Curtis Granderson, David Wright, Bruce Bochy, all names that came up in preliminary discussions, but not ones that find themselves on really the finalized list of people that already have been interviewed or plan to be interviewed this week in the hiring process. But before we go any further, I just want to shout out to everyone of my 200 plus viewers right now. Thank you so much for being here, folks. Again, hope you guys are enjoying the live stream if you're watching live on replay, as we break down everything there is to know about this managerial search, why it's so important, and also getting into every single detail to the T, to the best of my ability. Guys, I have a Word document next to me. I have 4 pages, 3 to 4 pages up right now on notes on all these 6 candidates that we'll be getting into. I want to make sure that we know everything from all different sources I found over the past day or two. So we'll be getting into them, but I also want to shout out Mets Productions for the $1 donation. Thank you so much, my friend. Hype in the chat for Mets Productions for the $1 dono. Always appreciate it. Thank you so much for that, as always. And yeah, we're going to get it right in shortly, folks. But before I get any further, I'm actually going to put a poll here in the stream as to who you guys would like to potentially see as manager. And we're already 30 likes away from 100, guys. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button if you're joining the stream. Again, thank you so much for the continued support, as always, folks. Let me ask you guys in the chat right now, who do you want as manager? Let me see how big I can make this poll. Hold on. Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me I'm trying to think. Okay, folks, we have a poll now in the chat, so if you want to go to it, make sure you do. And again, thank you all so much for the likes and subscriptions, as always, folks, as we get so close to 12K already, which is insane because it feels like we literally hit 10K 2 weeks ago. Exactly. I do see, did I see a donate? Did I miss something? I felt like I saw a donation. I'm going to just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything here. 1 second, everybody. But Showalter fits the Mets perfectly. I wouldn't say perfectly, but there's definitely reasons as to why they're favoring him, and we'll be getting into that. Buck is going to be the big discussion that we get towards the end of the live stream because I want to talk about everyone else leading up to that because most people know Buck Showalter's resume right now, so we'll be getting into it. 11-month membership. Oh, thank you so much. What was that? From Kyle? I think that was from Kyle. Kyle, thank you so much, my friend. You know how much I appreciate you. Thank you for being a great member here. It really does mean a lot. Let's see. Donation here from John. John, thank you so much for the donation, my man. Buck looks like Philip Seymour Hoffman from Moneyball as our Hal, but he's the best choice. Yeah, rest in peace to Philip Seymour Hoffman. That was a great movie. Moneyball, and in general, was a very good actor. Appreciate the donation a lot. I know that a lot of people are in love with Buck Showalter as their favorite pick. Not surprised by that at all. I'll get into my personal preference as well and really trying to address why Buck makes sense, why there are natural cause for concern with not just him, but for every single one of these candidates, and overall why exactly the Mets are pursuing all of them to varying levels. It doesn't look like the Mets have the same level of interest in everyone that we have reported here on the list, but there is reasoning behind what they're doing right now, and that's what we're going to get into for sure. $5 donation here from Browner, thank you so much, my man. Carlos Beltran. Yeah, Carlos, I know I was originally in favor of for a bit. It doesn't even look like Beltran's going to get a call, to be quite honest with you. Again, one simple report, one simple phone call can change everything. But until proven otherwise, Carlos Beltran is not even of consideration for the Mets in this managerial search, which I can perfectly understand considering they want people that actually have coaching experience. Even if it's not managerial experience, they want people that have been ingrained in the game for at least a decent amount of time that have coaching experience. And outside of being a great player, Carlos doesn't have that experience. And with also the PR surrounding him as well, there's a lot of reasons as to why they probably won't go down that route. Dave, thank you so much for the $2 donation. I hope they make the right choice. You and I both. And I will say this first and foremost, folks, before we deep dive everyone, I want to make something abundantly clear. And Dave points it out perfectly in his summary. Thank you so much for the donation, as always, Dave. Whoever the Mets hire as manager, whether it's someone completely old school and more experienced than anyone else in Buck Showalter, or it's someone completely new school and has the least amount of experience, that being in Don Kelly, regardless on who they hire, we have to take these guys with open arms and we have to be optimistic. Okay. If this offseason has proven us anything, Mets fans, it's that the Mets are clearly going down the proper direction. They've had a phenomenal offseason thus far with the decisions that they made. I have Justin Billy Epler, who originally a lot of people weren't satisfied with that hire, were really concerned with how he fared in LA. So it goes to show you that while the hire may not look pretty on paper, there's still reasons at the end of the day why the Mets are evaluating these people. And maybe just because they didn't do well in one stint or in this place doesn't necessarily justify that they're going to have that same outcome with the new club, that being in the Mets. So I really just want to throw that out there. I feel like everyone is getting so connected to one person or the other to the point where they're literally going to be pissed off or not even satisfied if their pick isn't the right pick, meaning that they're whoever they want to become manager doesn't become manager. I think we need to get out of that closed-minded mindset, because that's something where you're just going to set yourself up for failure when that doesn't do justice. That doesn't give the proper evaluation on who actually is being brought in, regardless on who that's going to be. So don't give yourself false hope. I would say be optimistic, be open-minded with everyone. If you're going to have your personal preferences, that's perfectly fine. All I'm saying is try to understand that the Mets, of course, have plenty of reasons, plenty more than we can even reportedly talk about at this point in regards to going after each and one of these 6 that they have been interviewing and will continue to throughout the next week plus, as they hope to have a hire done, reportedly, as Mike Puma said from the New York Post last night, by next Friday, that being December 17th. So, yeah, I'm going to address another donation here, folks, and then we'll start to deep dive each of these candidates. Thank you so much, Montez, for the $5 donate. Really appreciate that. So far, Cohen and Epler have had great moves together. I agree. Whoever it is, I trust the direction they are going. So far, so good this offseason. Again, put it to the T without me having to expand on it for like 5 additional minutes, because I just love to drag things out more than I usually need to. But great statement. Couldn't agree with you more. Wholeheartedly agree. Thank you so much for the donation, my friend. Hype in the chat to him. Again, thank you all so much for the likes and the subscriptions, folks. Like I said, help us get to 300 likes by the end of the stream, and also help us get to 12K subs, as we are just less than 100 away now, which is insane. But guys, let's start off with Brad Ausmus. Now, before I even deep dive Brad Ausmus at all, to my 240 viewers in the chat, are you in favor or against Brad Ausmus? And that's actually pretty funny. We have WardyNYM in the chat, who has a Yankees hat on my logo, which is nothing short of disgusting, but I appreciate the support one way or the other. That's funny. It makes me think something like Pat would do, but I know Pat didn't do that. Shout out to you regardless, Pat, if you're watching this or not. I know a lot of people aren't in favor of Brad Ausmus, so I want to read the room here. What's your initial take on Brad Ausmus? Let me hear it. Is he someone that you absolutely despise? Is he someone that isn't your favorite pick, but you can live with regardless? Let me know. Let me know what your take is on Brad Ausmus, and then we're going to get into everything on him. Again, perfectly understand if you're in favor or against him. Like I said, if there's one thing that I appreciate, at least with every one of these candidates, even Brad, as outlandish as that may seem to many of you watching this, there are positive takeaways where at least I can garner an understanding as to why this could be a potential fit. Maybe not a fit that is as likable or agreeable as many Mets fans would appreciate, but still someone that there's reasons, of course, why they're going after him. My dad is friends with guys that went to college with Ausmus, and he doesn't approve. Okay, that's funny. Jose, thank you so much for the $5 donation. A buck just checks all the boxes, no brainer. Again, we'll get into Buck, because I got a lot to say about Buck, more than I have in any other video to this point. Jose, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your thoughts there. Okay, so getting into Brad Ausmus, folks, let's do a quick background on Brad Ausmus in case you guys are not aware on who he is. I think most of us are aware on a handful of these guys. I know that the Don Kellys of the world, the Matt Quatraros, I'm probably saying his name wrong, and Joe Espada, to a certain extent, you might not have as much familiarity with. But we'll be getting into them. But Brad Ausmus, of course, the 52-year-old, he had experience with multiple years in the league as a manager, 5 seasons in the league. He's been a manager, as a matter of fact, originally from New Haven, Connecticut. So, not far at all from, East Coast wise to being in connection with people from New York. 5 seasons as the MLB manager from 2014 to 2017 with the Detroit Tigers, in which he had 2 winning seasons during his span there out of his 4 years, including Max Scherzer, who was one of his pitchers during his time in Detroit. Scherzer, the newly acquired starting pitcher, the 1-2 punch. I think everyone can agree the biggest duo that we may have see in the pitching world in quite some time, if not one of the best. Like, seriously, that being in Mad Max Scherzer and Jacob DeGrom. But Max, yes, he did pitch under Ausmus for a couple years, and then Ausmus was done after the 2017 season in Detroit. He was then a assistant. I'm almost certain he was a special assistant to Billy Epler, at least was an assistant in general for the LA Angels. And then in 2019, won the managerial position as Billy Epler interviewed him. So Billy Epler, when he went through his managerial process, hiring process, he's done this before twice already when he was with the Angels in his not extended stint over that 4 or 5 years. He did hire Brad Ausmus, and Ausmus was cut short after only 1 year with the Angels. And I think that's something that a lot of people are pinpointing to as well. And don't get me wrong, Ausmus is by no means a perfect manager from his experience in his career. He has been more of a loser than he's been a winner. But when you look at his stint in LA, it's awfully similar to Billy Epler because, one, the guy had nothing that he's working with. Yes, you had Mike Trout. Yes, of course, you had a strong offense. But pitching-wise, he had absolutely nothing there. They dealt with plenty of injuries. They did not have a rotation or a bullpen at all that was really feasible to get them towards a playoff run. They weren't even remotely close. So that isn't to justify the mistakes that Ausmus made during his time with the Angels. But my point is that if we're basing things simply on the win-loss column, I don't think that's deserving in regards to someone like Ausmus, who many believe, including Billy Epler, I think I've seen, speculation at least, felt that he was cut short. But again, that was already Marino's decision at the end of the day to part with Ausmus after only 1 year in LA. Then they went with Joe Maddon, and then they still at this point have yet to have a winning season in the MLB with Maddon as their latest manager that Epler did hire as well. But Epler wasn't in favor of Maddon. We'll get into who exactly he was in favor of throughout the live stream. But Epler, Ausmus, they have that connection as it is. They're two people that when you look at them, yes, they already interviewed. They went through that process. And the fact that Epler already went out of his way once in his tenure as a GM in the MLB to put him in as manager tells you that, yes, there is a familiarity. There is a connection there. And do I think Ausmus is a favorite? No, I don't think he is. But there are obvious reasons as to why he's being considered right now. And there are obvious reasons as to why he very well could be the hire for the Mets. So in this scenario where Brad Ausmus does get hired by the Mets, I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that. Ausmus was a far greater player than he has been a manager at this point in his career. But similar to Epler, seeing what things would be like in a different setting with the New York Mets, having at least MLB managerial experience under his belt, being in a couple winning seasons in Detroit, let's see what he could do with a far better roster than what he's had in previous years as a manager. But still, I understand the criticisms with him for certain. He does have that fire to him as well that I know that people do like in a manager. So that might be appealing to you if you find yourself more in that category. But regardless, there's perfect understanding before and against Ausmus. He's not a favorite of mine at all, but he is someone that I cannot at least understand the rationale as to why the Mets have him in heavy consideration among their top 6 reported options. So that's really all you need to know about Brad Ausmus. Other than that, the one more thing that I couldn't mention, which I don't really know how much this holds true in regards to helping him in this search, but he is a Dartmouth graduate, which helps out Sandy and Bren being Sandy's son, who's a part of the Mets organization as an assistant in the front office, because both of them went to Dartmouth and were graduates as well. So there is that familiarity schooling-wise with some higher execs in the Mets organization. Again, I don't really think it has much input, much say in regards to hiring him or not, but that just is one of the many connections that he currently has with the Mets. But I'm going to get on to the donations here in a second, folks. Again, thank you all so much for the support in the live stream. If you're watching live or on replay, continue smashing that like and subscribe button. As always, folks, it's always appreciated. Okay, now I want to address a couple donations and then we'll go further. Elliot, thank you so much for the $5 donation. My top 3 is Joe, Matt, and Buck. Okay, I can respect that 1,000%. I really find myself in the same category as you in regards to top 3. If I could come up with one right now, I'm right in line with you. Thank you so much for that donation, Elliot. Hi in the chat for Elliot, Mets Nation. Pen Mets with a $20 donation. Thank you so much, Pen Mets. Always appreciate your support. You're always beyond generous. Thank you so much. Don't necessarily want the popular choice, Showalter. I like Ausmus and think Geren would be good, Both have that intensity that has been missing since Collins. Ausmus is smart, and Geren has been in the World Series as bench coach. Geren has been to the World Series multiple times, and we'll get into that more once we talk about him specifically. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought up, especially the intensity aspect, because I'm curious to know, in the chat, if you're watching this live or on replay, let me know in the comments below. I know a lot of you guys prefer a manager with intensity, and I know a lot of you guys, as we did live streams and cover the Mets all throughout the past season, were not in favor of Luis Rojas, not just because of poor decision making at times, but because you felt that he didn't have that fire to him, that kickback that you're hoping to get from a manager when it's deservedly so in a game, when there is a bad call or something goes awry. So for that class of fans, Ausmus is a guy that definitely would come off appealing to you in that sense for sure, along with any other factor that could find itself in. Isaac, thank you so much for the $5 donation as well, my friend. Hyping the chat for Isaac. Maben pulling for Beltran and Max pulling for Buck. Obviously, Max wins, but it's nice to see two others vote Beltran. Love to see Beltran, but it's Buck. Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely think that Buck is the favorite right now towards the top of the list for obvious reasons that we'll be getting into more throughout the live stream. And make sure to check out the video earlier today at the time of recording this if you haven't already, which further defends what I'm saying right now. Beltran, again, is someone that is going to be in a coaching staff in the MLB soon, regardless on if it's with the Mets or not. But it doesn't look like the Mets are in a position where they're not just, one, willing, or two, really even capable of bringing in someone that has no coaching experience at any level to come in and have a prominent role. This is a Mets team that, while they're focused on the long-term future, they are also just as focused on the short-term future, which goes in hand with a lot of their shorter-term AAV signings, the most notable one being the man on the wall behind me, and the man that is advocating for someone like Buck, that being a Max Scherzer. So I understand Beltran is someone that I would really like to see as part of the coaching staff for the Mets at some point. It just doesn't feel like this is the proper time for him, nor is it the proper time for the Mets in the direction that they're currently going down. Isaac, thank you so much for the donation. Really appreciate that. Shout out to Scott, great member on the channel. Shout out to Tim, great friend and member on the channel. Shout out to all you guys. Matthew, Sima, Joe, going down the list. Leo, appreciate you guys chiming in. Urena, how's it going, my man? Matthew, all you guys, thank you all so much. But we're going to get into more, folks. So everyone has a good understanding. I think I'm Brad Ausmus. So we're about to go to Mr. Don Kelly, who I had fun learning up on, because I had no clue who this man was until he got connected to the Mets in this search. Okay, folks. So Don Kelly. Who's Don Kelly, you might ask? He's a 41-year-old former MLB player, someone who, like Ausmus, former MLB player, not to the same degree, wasn't anything crazy, was a utility player at the MLB level, was solid in the minors too. But he's also a native of Butler, PA, which is right around the Pittsburgh area. So he's always had connections to Pittsburgh as it was. And this is something where I think is going to be a huge factor into Kelly when it comes to this interview process. Because just from the information that I've squandered at this point, really have piled up, it doesn't look like Kelly's going to leave unless he for certain is getting the managerial position. And I don't think Kelly's a favorite right now. Again, we'll see what information comes out after being live here, either, later today or in the coming days, because the search is still going on as they do these interviews. But Don Kelly's only 41 years of age. He started out as a scout and assistant on player development staff for the Detroit Tigers, and then was moved up to an official MLB scout for the club in 2017. In 2018, he was the Astros first base coach, so we got a taste of experience with a really strong team, right after the Gene Scandal World Series. But in 2018, also has familiarity with another candidate on this list, that being Joe Espada, because Espada has been the bench coach since 2018, and at 2018 for the 1 year, he found himself as a first base coach. So they have those ties as well, which could be some level of a factor in the interview process. I don't really think it does, but something to throw out there too, that they have connection with each other during their time in the Astros. But then in 2019, he was then hired by the Pittsburgh Pirates as their bench coach and hasn't looked back since. He grew up in the Pittsburgh area, as I mentioned, and played for the Pirates. So endless Pittsburgh connections as it is. And to make things even more significant Pittsburgh-wise, his wife is former New York Met and former Pittsburgh Pirate. He's more known for being with the Pirates than the Mets, Neil Walker. So Neil Walker's sister is Don Kelly's wife. So endless Pittsburgh connections going on. Yes, of course, he can have insight, that being a Neil Walker, on advocating for him to go to the Mets, on if it's worthwhile. Maybe he was a helping saying him getting an interview done with even going for the interview. But Kelly's only 41, and from everything that I've seen to this point, he's an unbelievably high riser in the game. So yes, I know that he hasn't had coaching experience over a decade like a lot of the other guys that you see listed here, but he is someone that is very much bound to have success in a coaching staff, not just for the Pirates, but for wherever he goes for the foreseeable future. Again, 41, great mind, just ended his MLB and baseball career a couple years ago, was already the first base coach for the Astros, still during their prime with all their core group in 2018, and took on the Pittsburgh job for the Pirates solely not just because of wanting to be a bench coach, a higher position, but because he gets to be back home in Pittsburgh. There's all these connections with Pittsburgh, so I don't see him as a likelihood. I don't see it as a likelihood, more so because I don't think that it's going to be easy to pry him away from Pittsburgh. Even though that, of course, a managerial shot is an important thing. I'm sure that's huge on him, something that I would love to do. But I think if you're talking about a guy that has everything as comfortable as possible at home right now, it is someone like Don Kelly. So wouldn't expect too much from Don Kelly. But again, all it takes is for that interview to go really well and for him to impress and him wanting to be here for me, for everything that I've said at this point to be turned otherwise. So we'll see what comes of Don Kelly, but definitely a very intriguing guy. Had no clue about him. Was fun looking him up and is widely regarded as a great young high riser in the coaching staff for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who again has experience with a winning club in the Astros and also had experience with the Detroit Tigers when he first got started in scouting and coaching in the MLB. But I want to address a couple more donations here, folks, and then we'll go from there. Again, to my roughly 300 viewers, thank you all so much for chiming in, folks. Like I said, I'll be getting a lot of your questions, comments, and concerns throughout the live stream, and especially towards the end when it's more of an open Q&A after we go through each and every one of these candidates individually, because I want to make sure you guys know everything that you possibly can about them. If you haven't read up on them, or maybe you don't know as much as what you would like to know at this point in the scenario where they do hire, of course, one of these people. Kish, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I really appreciate that. Hyping the chat for my man Kish. Ausmus cost me in a Roto League back in 1996. It's a grudge I hold this day. Kish, that's actually hilarious. I'm sorry to hear that, but I appreciate the donation no less. Hype in the chat for Kish back in 96. That's hilarious, dude. Charles with the $5 donation. Hey, Tyler, how's my night's going? Great, Charles. I'm under the weather, but the show goes on. Hope you're doing well. I was just wondering if we should care about players' opinions on the job, or does that just hurt the team? Great question, Charles. And let's talk for a second about the guy, the PFP that you have, that being a Mad Max Scherzer. So here's my take on players' input. Players' input is important. And again, thank you so much for the donation. It's really important, okay? I think it's important for sure, and kind of gain an idea as to what the clubhouse culture is going to be. But I also do not think that a player's input on just strictly advocating for someone should be a groundbreaking, development, a huge factor into hiring a manager. Because at the end of the day, just because the player might have a personal preference for this person doesn't mean that goes for everyone, of course, in that clubhouse, nor does it mean that just because they like them that they're going to be good fits. So Max Scherzer, I trust the man. Max wants to win. He wants Buck because he knows that this is a short window right now for his time in New York. Same thing with Buck. He views Buck as probably the best option for a win now stage. I completely understand that. That makes plenty of sense. But there's also some caution that you should take, just knowing that Max hasn't even pitched a game for the Mets yet, and you're going to let him have a say in what your managerial decision is going to be. I don't think that should be the case. But I do think that positive or negative input from the people on your roster isn't a bad thing. It's always good to have further insight from people within the organization, especially the players that are going to be working one-on-one with their soon-to-be coach. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I also think that it isn't necessarily a benefit always either, depending on exactly who they're advocating for, the reasons behind that. You just want to make sure that the players don't get to a point where they're really dictating so much of a team's decision-making that it could be a detriment to their success. You never want that. So that's my take on it. I see the positives, and I also see the potential negatives as well. Felix, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I like Espada, but Buck has so much more experience. This is what this team needed for a couple of years. Again, I understand why everyone's such a heavy advocate for the experience route managerial-wise. Obviously, Espada doesn't have that, but Espada by no means is a young buck, no pun intended, in regards to coaching in this league. He has over a decades worth of experience that we'll be getting into later in the live stream on everything there is to know about him. Yes, he hasn't been a manager yet, but he's going to be manager in the MLB very soon, regardless on if it's with the Mets or not. So take that as you will. Thank you so much for the donation, Felix. Appreciate that. Mets Nation again with the $2 donation. Thank you. This roster deserves the best manager. I agree. Of course, I think regardless of how the roster is, I want the Mets to get the Mets best manager out there as well. So I agree with you on that one. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Elliot, as always, folks. So let's talk about, and I'll get into the analytics stuff, because to think that analytics is bull is a fallacy. It has such a greater impact than you guys will ever know. And it's just, there's a difference between having analytics and how to properly utilize it. That's something that the Mets clearly struggled with in their first year with Rojas, under their system with Zach Scott. They did a lot of things wrong, and things are very much different now, and they will continue to be. But I'll get into that further throughout the live stream, like I said. But we talked about Ausmus, we talked about Don Kelly. So now let's get to one of my personal favorites on this list, just because I'm very high on him. I know that he's a guy that looks like that he could be a manager in the league rather soon too. If it's not going to be with the Mets, that being Matt Quatraro. I could be saying his name wrong too. If I am, I apologize, guys. Feel free to correct me in the live stream, or however you wish. And again, help us get to 300 likes by the end of the stream, and also help us get to 12K subs, because we're less than 100 away right now. But guys, Matt is really interesting. Really enticed by him. 48-year-old from East Selkirk, New York. So he's a New York native. He's an A's manager candidate, and that's why you have the little green, I don't even know what to call that star, if you will, that I have on the graphic. Same thing with Joe Espada. Both those are managerial candidates for the Oakland A's, which could be of issue for the Mets here in this search. I don't think it's going to be with the route it seems like that they're going to go down. But to me, if you're looking at two guys that very well are going to be managers soon, yes, and one of them, asterisk, yes, one of them looks like that they very well could be the next manager for the A's, should it not be with the Mets. But Matt, let's get into him again. He's found himself as the Cleveland Guardians now hitting coach from 2014 to 2017. Why is that important? Well, one of the factors is who he was coaching, helping hitting wise. He really was a big part of Francisco Lindor's start to his career in the MLB, because Lindor's first 3 years in the league were while Matt was the assistant hitting coach during his time in Cleveland. Then he went on to the Tampa Bay Rays as their third base coach in 2018, and then was promoted to their bench coach in 2019, which he has been in that position since then and has done a phenomenal job. And this is where things get very exciting when it comes to a guy like Matt, because yes, he does have managerial experience, but he has everything that it takes to be a manager. Since becoming a coach in 2014, he has never been a part of a losing club. That's important, especially if we're trying to build a culture about continued success, winning success, how to get there, not just with the old school, but with the new school, balancing analytics and, the eye test, all those things, being able to be behind, Francona from Cleveland, and then to be behind Cash, who's back-to-back AL Managers of the Year. That's impressive as it is. So again, throughout 8 seasons already as a coach in the MLB in different positions between Cleveland and Tampa Bay, he has found himself in playoff runs in 5 of those years, including 2 World Series berths, one with Cleveland when Lindor was with them when they lost to the Chicago Cubs, another when it was the Tampa Bay Rays in the shortened 2020 season when they lost to the LA Dodgers. And he's also been a part of clubs that have won their division, been in first place 4 times. So if you're talking about winning, if you're talking about someone that understands exactly what it takes to be a part of a winning club, especially in today's baseball, understanding how analytics are used and also being behind 2 of the best managers in baseball over the past decade, yes, awesome resume for Matt Quatraro. So that's obviously why the Oakland A's have interest in him. He's a managerial candidate for them. I'm not sure if he's interviewed with them yet. He probably has, but I'm almost certain he interviewed with the Mets already, or he's about to. And these interviews have been going on for literally 5 hours long, according to reports. So Mets are definitely making this as significant as possible in regards to the interview process. So Matt, we're going to see what comes of him. I'm curious, everyone in the chat right now, though, how do you feel about Matt Quatraro potentially being the managerial candidate for the Mets? I know I didn't really ask that about Don Kelly, so I'll ask the same with him. But how you guys feel about them as well? Again, Matt, when you look resume-wise, he has some, outside of not being an actual manager in the league yet, he has arguably the best resume here. So let me know what your guys' take is on this. Again, I'm really enticed by pretty much everyone that's listed here for different reasons, however. And I respect everyone's opinion if you're for or against them. Let me make that clear too. I'm doing great, Paul. How are you, my friend? Pet Mets with a $10 donation. Thank you so much for that, Pet Mets. I believe Espada and Quatraro will have bright futures as managers, but after Callaway and Rojas, I believe the Mets need someone with experience. I will say there's a drastic difference between those two versus someone like Rojas and even Callaway. Both Rojas had no MLB coaching experience, and Callaway did not have nearly the same length as someone like Espada or Quatraro. So I will say I get it. That's easy to connect the two because none of them have been managers before. But at the same time, their experience at coaching at the MLB level are very different. So just making that known as well for you guys in case you aren't aware. And I'll get into Espada throughout the live stream. Don't you worry. Again, I hope you're one of the last people we talk about candidate-wise. But Pet Mets, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. And that's another thing, too. I think that there's this common misconception, as John said here in the chat. Cohen doesn't want someone learning in his dime. I agree, but neither Espada or Quatraro would be doing that. These are guys that have had extensive experience, especially Espada. Both of them, though, respectively, being for successful clubs as a bench coach and winning organizations. So to say that they're going to be learning on his dime, that's a fallacy. They're not going to be learning to nearly the same extent that you think a Louis Rojas would be, or even a Mickey Callaway. These guys have far greater experience, have far more impressive resumes. It's a different discussion. I think when you're looking at, Cohen not wanting someone to learn on his dime, that's where you talk about the people that actually don't have experience. That's where you're talking about people that only say have minor league experience for different coaching routes, or even people that don't have experience but are, say, well regarded as potentially being a manager one day, like Carlos Beltran. I think Beltran's a prime example of someone that Cohen doesn't want, that he's trying to avoid. I don't think you can say nearly the same about Quatraro or Espada because their experience is very different than Rojas and Callaway as examples. Mad Max, no need to apologize, my man. And Stephen A., I'm doing great, my man. I'm hoping for Showalter. Yeah, I know a lot of people want Buck. We'll be getting into it more. Anything new on Jose Ramirez? Nope, nothing new on. There's never been anything on Jose Ramirez. The writing is on the wall now. Buck will be the next manager if Cohen and Max want Showalter. I don't necessarily think that it's for certain going to happen, but yes, Buck is the early favorite. That I agree with. As a Braves fan, I don't want to give him away, but Washington could be a great pick. Yeah, I don't even think Washington's going to get an interview, to be quite honest with you. And I don't think that's a slight on him. I just think that's because the Mets are comfortable with who they're considering right now. Espada just got the death kiss from Lindor. I just heard that Lindor wants him. Where did you hear that Lindor wants him? Again, wouldn't be surprising because Espada did help coach Lindor in the World Baseball Classic in 2017, along with Seth Lugo and Edwin Diaz. So there's the New York Mets connection. But I'm not sure where you saw the report. Okay, so some conflicting thoughts in regards to Quatraro. Some people in favor, some people against. Again, I respect everyone's. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to realize that just because someone doesn't have managerial experience does not mean that they are not going to be a proper fit to be a manager. There's a difference between not having managerial experience and not having MLB coaching experience. It's a completely different ball game if you don't even have MLB coaching experience, especially if you've been the guy that's been like Joe Espada that we'll be getting into, who's literally been making plenty of the decisions for Dusty Baker since he's come in as manager for the Astros. That's been a huge factor into him. Again, there's a lot that goes into it. The manager doesn't control everything. The coaching staff is a big help. Coaching staff has a bigger say depending on who exactly is manager, and the front office has a big factor as well. The managerial position does not mean nearly as much as I think a lot of people do. But again, we'll be getting into further. Sledge, how's it going, my friend? Fake news in regards to Lindor. Again, it wouldn't surprise me. Let me put it that way. It would not surprise me at all if Lindor is advocating for Espada for obvious reasons, as I said already. Do I think Cora is the best manager in the league? No, but I think he's definitely one of them. I think Alex Cora is one of the best managers in the league. And if you're talking about a guy that had no managerial experience but did great right away, taking the cheating aside, look at Alex Cora, bench coach for the Astros under AJ Hinch, and look what he did. So I'm trying to say The route that the Mets are really debating more than anything right now is, do they want to hire someone that could potentially be the next Alex Cora, the person that has endless experience behind great managers, or do they want someone that is already established and has been in the league for a while? And while there are naturally some concerns, given the fact that maybe if they haven't been in the league for a while, like Showalter, they want someone that they know has handled it all before. So that's really, I would imagine, the biggest battle that they're weighing in this hiring process, because there's no denying that there is a drastic difference between a Buck Showalter and a Don Kelly. Like they really aren't even remotely close. So just like the hiring process for president baseball operations and or GM when they hired Billy Epler, if the Mets didn't go with Billy Epler, Adam Cromie was right there as a potential fit. He was in a very different position than Billy Epler experience-wise. Did not have any GM experience and wasn't even in the MLB for the past couple of years. So again, Mets are weighing all their options here. It'll be curious to see what route they go down. I think we all have an idea as to the route they're going down, but I understand why they're going down these different routes. The asterisks mean, Edwin, that both Joe Espada and Matt Quatraro are not just options for the Mets managerial-wise as their reported candidates. They're also reported candidates for the Oakland A's because the A's need a manager as well after just giving away Mr. Melvin to the San Diego Padres without a problem. So that's what's happening. But with that being said, we talked about Ausmus, we talked about Kelly, we talked about Matt Quatraro, and I did talk about Granderson already, so check that out earlier in the live stream if you can. But I'll take more questions throughout the live stream once we get towards the end of talking about these candidates. Now let's get into one that was reported today, really the last name to be thrown in this mix from adding from 5 to 6 now, that being in Bob Geren. Let's get into Bob Geren because if you guys don't know, Bob does have connections with the New York Mets, as many of you know as well. And again, a little bit of a surprise to see him come up. It makes sense why he's coming up. I don't know why. He just was a name that didn't pop in my head. And Mateo, thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Okay, and no, I don't dislike Buck. Let me make that clear. All I care about is whatever the Mets do, I'm going to be very optimistic with. I've been very open. Buck has not been my personal favorite, but the same can even be said with Was Billy Epler my personal favorite when he was first thrown in the running? No, he wasn't. I actually liked Adam Cromie more than I liked Billy Epler when we were basing things on resume. But more than anything, I have to trust the process of what the Mets are doing. And as soon as Epler got hired, I was very optimistic, thinking that, Artie Moreno had his hand tied in LA. I think that he's going to work great with Steve Cohen, knowing how to handle a big payroll, but actually be able to spend and address needs like pitching. And that's exactly what Billy has done so far in landing Scherzer and others. So I'm really not close-minded with any of this, okay? The Mets can go and land and hire someone that I've never even heard of, literally never even heard of before. And I'm still going to be optimist. I'm still going to be advocating for it because I'm trusting the process of what the Mets are doing. I think everyone can agree that we should be under that same mindset with how the Mets have went about this offseason so far. So that's my take. Again, I don't have anything personal against Buck. I will be excited and cautiously optimistic if he becomes the hire. I will also feel the same way about anyone else that gets hired. Just because maybe they weren't my first choice doesn't mean that it isn't the right choice, right? So again, that's why I emphasize so much in the stream. It's important to not be locked on so much on one individual person, because then you're going to find yourself not rationally thinking and thinking, oh, this is a bad move, when in reality, it very well could be an awesome move for the Mets. We just have to give it time. And that's something that I'm very, very heavy in advocating for sure. Breadman Kane 500 tonight? I think so, Thomas. But getting into Bob Geren, though, folks, many of you know him, the 60-year-old from San Diego, California, former player as well. Originally was the A's bullpen coach in 2003. That's how he got his career started in coaching in the MLB. Then was promoted to bench coach, and he was in that position until 2006. And then he became manager for the Oakland A's from 2007 to 2011. And his managerial record, not good. He really didn't do that great in Oakland during his only stint as manager in the MLB. Again, this is years ago, so I don't think it holds as much to what it would now. But he went 334 and 376 in his win-loss record during his couple of years as manager in Oakland before they, of course, then hired Bob Melvin. But then we get into hired by Sandy Alderson as Mets bench coach in 2011, and he was a big helping say with them in the 2015 World Series. That was the one winning season that Geren was a part of with the Mets. He helped the Mets, and something that Sandy reportedly credited him with, and also the same can be said with Terry Collins, is that his use and great knowledge of analytics and advanced analytics. So Bob Geren, when he went from the Oakland A's, taking over that analytics philosophy that's so well known from the Billy Bean aspect, and even Sandy, when they first started things in Oakland, he transferred that over further to the Mets, and they really credited him with his analytics mindset, being the bench coach for the Mets. And then in 2016, he became the bench coach of the Dodgers, that being in Geren. And he said that really the reason for it, because he was going from bench coach to bench coach. That's a lateral move. You don't see that happen too much in baseball. He said the reason for it was location, so he could be closer with his family, because, again, he's a San Diego native, Cali native. So it makes sense, and thankfully for him, everything's went right since then. He's experienced 9 first-place division finishes as a coach, not as a manager per se, but just as an overall coach. 9 playoff runs is total as a coach, and 4 World Series appearances. That is how much experience Geren has as a coach, including the great success that he's had with the Dodgers since arriving there in 2016, including winning the World Series against the Tampa Bay Rays and against Matt Quatraro, the fellow bench coach on the other side, in 2020. So, yeah, that's really all you need to know. And Quatraro, definitely strong resume as well. If we're looking at his managerial experience, it's not great, but I also will say that the same could be said with Billy Epler as GM. So I'm not going to hold that against him. He's learned so much working in great organizations like the Oakland A's when you're talking about analytics and advanced analytics, like also the Mets, even though that, they weren't analytically heavy. He's someone that actually helped bring that over into the clubhouse. And also, of course, with the LA Dodgers, does get much better than that with the great system that they have. So everyone in the chat right now, how do you feel about Bob Geren potentially being a managerial candidate for the Mets? Not potentially, he is a managerial candidate. So how do you feel about him being a potential fit at the position? I think he would make plenty of sense for the Mets. I will say, however, that, I don't see him coming to the Mets at all unless it is, in fact, the managerial position, because of his preference to be in LA so he's closer with his family. Obviously, it's a different discussion when you go from a lateral move to a promotion, but still, similar to Don Kelly a little bit, as we talked about earlier in the live stream. I don't think he's likely, but he's definitely a possibility right now, as he has been reported. Scott H, thank you so much for the new membership, my man. I really appreciate that. Hype in the chat for Scott H for the membership. And guys, we're halfway there already to 300 likes by the end of the stream. So continue smashing that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the stream. Again, thank you all so much, folks. It really, really does mean a lot to me. Appreciate the support as always, and help us get to 12K subs. As I mentioned, that's what we are trying to get to for our next short-term goal, because we're less than 100 away. And make sure to check out the video from earlier today if you haven't. Let's see. I don't think so. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Thomas. I don't hate it. I think he would do good, just like all the candidates. Okay. Mets mutual interest in Quatraro. Political baseball news reporter. Okay. Politics baseball news report. The more I hear, the more I enjoy the insights you have provided. John, thank you. I appreciate that. And really appreciate that, John. Because again, I think, as I made known already, context is so important, right? I feel like when we go about not just the hiring process, but when it comes to signing or trading for a player, losing a player, it's just so easy to draw conclusions based off of previous success or lack of success with that person, that we kind of lose sight as to really the endless reasons and inner workings going behind these decisions made. So I really appreciate those kind of words. Thank you for that. What's my downside on Buck? I'll get into Buck. I will deep dive Buck more than anyone else here. Don't you worry. Buck will be the heaviest talking point before we get out of the live stream here, folks. Dave, you still want me as manager? I appreciate that, Dave. I would do a terrible job, but I would not do a terrible job because of a lack of effort, if that makes sense. Okay, folks. We talked about Ausmus. We talked about Kelly. We talked about Quatraro. We talked about Geren. Let's check now in the stream what the poll is. Wow, a whopping 76% of you folks, through 430 votes so far, want Buck Showalter as the next Mets manager. Interesting. Can't say I'm surprised from the trends I've seen in my comments and on Twitter, but interesting. Okay, folks, now let's get into the second to last candidate of today's discussion. That is the man that is going to be a manager very soon in the MLB. Like I said, regardless on if it's with the Mets or not, the highly desirable Joe Espada. Joe Espada, I made abundantly clear. We did a video a couple days ago Joe Espada or Buck Showalter? Who makes more sense for the Mets, right? I said personally I like Joe Espada more, but I also said that I perfectly understand if the Mets do go down the Buck Showalter route, and I will support it just as much as I would Espada. But Espada, there's a lot of things to like about this guy. So if he finds himself potentially as, because I do think that Espada is really right up there. I don't know if he's on the same level as Buck, but he is right towards the tippy top of the list in regards to potentially landing as manager for the Mets. Out of everyone that's been reported so far, Espada is right up there. And that's why we're talking about him right before we get to Buck Showalter. And let's talk about Espada, baby. 46-year-old from San Juan, Puerto Rico. As I said, there's that Francisco Lindor connection. There's that Seth Lugo connection, the Puerto Rican, right? If you know, you know. There's that Edwin Diaz connection because he coached all of them as part of the staff in the 2017 World Baseball Classic for Team Puerto Rico. Also helped coach Team Puerto Rico in 2013. But getting into him some more, he started off his career again, and he's an A's managerial candidate, as I mentioned. Started off his career coaching-wise as the Marlins third base coach in 2010. Then he went on to be the Yankees special assistant to Brian Cashman in 2014, which during that time, that's also when Billy Epler was assistant GM to Brian Cashman. So they had familiarity during that year. And then he went on in 2015. He was officially hired by the Yankees as an infield and third base coach. He stayed in those positions from 2015 until after the 2017 season, in which, working not just behind AJ Hinch, but also working behind, now that we've seen in Dusty Baker, has done a great job and experienced 3 first-place division finishes as a coach in the MLB, 6 playoff runs and 2 World Series at over a decade-long span now of being a coach in the MLB for that matter. Let's see. Since 2018, he has interviewed for manager with the Texas Rangers, Chicago Cubs, LA Angels, in which Billy Epler was the GM for the Angels during that time. Epler ended up going with Brad Ausmus for that hire heading into the 2019 season, but he did get pretty far in the interview process from what I've seen. And he also interviewed with the Giants and went very deep into discussions with the Giants and before they hired Gabe Kapler. And you can't blame the Giants for hiring Gabe Kapler because he just won Manager of the Year from the NL. So got to give tip the cat credit where credit's due. I mean, there's a lot of speculation or, reasonings as to why he hasn't been a manager in the league yet. People are wondering, okay, why has he been snubbed so much? And I find myself asking that same question. I think it's more so on poor evaluation by certain teams than I think it is on Espada, because this guy's going to be a manager soon, whether we like it or not, regardless on if it's with the Mets, as I've said multiple times. The Rangers went a different route. They've had a little success with their new manager since then. The Cubs, of course, stayed in-house. Look at where that has gone them to this point. If you look at the LA Angels, Brad Ausmus, that didn't do good in that 1 year. Then they went to Joe Maddon. Joe Maddon hasn't done anything with them yet. And then you get on to the Giants. Giants, yes, they've had success with Kapler, but that's a different situation. That's a different front office. That's a great player development group. And that's Gabe Kapler really just having an amazing year now in his year 2 as manager for the Giants after the short season. And Espada also talked to the Detroit Tigers, was in discussions with them reportedly from a report I saw with the Detroit Tigers prior to that AJ Hinch then becoming their new manager. So he's been involved in basically every managerial opening that we've seen in recent years, including the one that the A's currently have. So Espada, keep an eye on him. He's someone that's deemed so highly of all throughout the MLB with respective executives and coaches and players. I've seen a lot of different articles sharing insight on Espada and why he makes so much sense to be the next great thing managerial-wise in the MLB. I don't exactly know how good he's going to be, just like I don't know how anyone is going to be of the list that we're discussing today. But Espada is high on the Mets list, and for good reason. So with that being said, if Joe Espada ends up becoming the hire for the Mets, even though that looks like Buck is a favorite, if the Mets go somewhere else, if they go with Joe Espada, what is your personal take going to be? So everyone in the chat, how do you feel about Joe Espada? What's your opinion on him, in favor or against him? Again, as I said plenty of times, and I'll say it again, I respect everyone's opinion. I like Joe Espada. I can understand if you still have natural concerns, but let me know, everyone, your thoughts in the chat. Steven, great member of the channel. Thank you for being here. How about time? I'll give you a timeout because you asked so nicely. I won't block. I'll give you a timeout if that's what you asked for. Joe's your first pick. Second choice, okay. Okay. Let's keep in mind though, folks, if the Mets do hire someone other than Buck Showalter, they are not the second choice. They are not the third choice. They are the first choice. I'd like to make that clear. There's nothing stopping the Mets from hiring Buck Showalter than the Mets, right? Mets have a different situation, as I said, though, with Joe and Matt, because these are two guys that are desirable from a team that needs a manager. So do I think that Joe would potentially like to be with the Mets more so than the A's? Yes, I think so, especially because the A's are going more so in a retool route, rebuild/retool versus win now. But still, regardless on what personal preferences are, the A's are probably working fairly fast in their process for a manager as well. So that could go in hand with why the Mets are doing these evaluations, but have a 6-person list to this point at the time of being live here. So we're going to see what comes of it. Again, I like Espada. I've been a fan of him for a while, but by no means am I against the Mets if they don't go with Espada. There are reasons for it. I do think Espada will be a very strong manager in the MLB one day, regardless on if it's with the Mets or not. I think there's that same argument that could be said with Matt Quatraro as well. Okay. We talked about Brad. We talked about Don. We talked about Matt. We talked about Bob. We talked about Joe. That was a drum roll that I tried doing. And that is now time for Buck Showalter. All right, folks. Big Bucks. Just like Billy Big Bucks, as I like to call him. We got Big Buck Showalter in the house. Let's talk about Buck Showalter that everyone is infatuated with, it feels like. You either love Buck or you hate him. I think I'm one of those anomalies that's kind of in the middle. But let's talk about Buck Showalter. A lot of people like Buck. I've seen nothing but kind comments about him in my chat and videos, more than I have negative by far. But Buck Showalter, 65 years of age, as we know, originally from Defunic. I probably said that wrong. Springs, Florida. Let's talk about his managerial career, right? He started off with the New York Yankees, as we know, 1992 to 1995. His first year being gone from the Yankees, of course, Torrey came in. They won a World Series, and then they went on to win World Series for the next 5 years. So Buck, first round as a manager in the MLB, didn't go as much as he would probably like it to go with the Yankees, but still, has experience in New York, knows how to handle the media, knows how to win in New York, even though he hasn't won it all yet. He then went on to be the expansion Diamondbacks manager from 1998 to 2000. Then after that, in 2003, 2006, for 3 years, he was the manager of the Texas Rangers. And then, as we know at this point, he spent 8 years, 2010 to 2018, with the Baltimore Orioles, in which he found himself having the most success in his career as a manager. And Buck, 1,551 wins, 1,517 losses as an MLB manager over a 20-year span. That's a boatload of experience. Buck is an anomaly of a candidate versus anyone else that we have listed right now, given his experience alone. He's in a class of his own because, again, I don't think Bruce Bochy is someone that's going to find himself really in significant running for this. He was mentioned, but he isn't getting an interview, doesn't look like. And I don't think he wants to leave San Francisco. But Buck, experience-wise, he checks off that box. No nonsense-wise, he checks off that box. Knowing what it takes to win, even though he hasn't won it all yet, checks off that box. Relationship with Billy Epler does have some, checks off that box. I saw that, Thomas. That's funny. Shout out Pat. $2 donation here from Mets Nation. Elliot, thank you so much for your $2 dono. I think Buck manage the All-Star team. I'm sure he has at some point. Thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that a lot, Elliot. Let's see. Age is also bold. I'm not critiquing Buck's age here. So again, I don't know what you're insinuating. That's not coming from me. The point I'm trying to make about Buck, though, is his experience, his connections with Billy Epler, as I've said plenty in either videos or live streams on the channel, is that reports indicate that Billy Epler wanted Buck Showalter as his manager in his final year with the LA Angels after the Brad Ausmus stint for 1 year when they had to do another hire. He was on a win-now stage with the Angels, felt Buck was the best route. Artie Moreno, the schmuck owner for the Angels, said no. They went with Joe Madden because he was available after parting with the Cubs. And as we know, Madden hasn't done anything really of significance with the Angels yet, at least winning wise. So Buck has been a free agent as on the market, as we know. And as we've seen, what reports have indicated today, as we talked about in a live stream earlier today. And again, I also apologize, folks, if I sound a little funnier than usual. I know I sound like a clown to begin with, but if I sound a little clogged up or anything, or you see me blow my nose, it's because I am under the weather currently. So I still want to get this stream out there because a lot of information has come out, but my apologies again if I'm sounding a little stupid more than I usually do. But point on Buck is that reports today indicate that both Steve Cohen has advocated that he wants Buck Showalter as manager for the Mets. And while that Steve Cohen has not been in the interview process for at least the first round of interviews, it does look like that Buck is the favorite, as we talked about in our previous video. And in that video, I also mentioned Max Scherzer, as we said earlier in the live stream too, has been in favor of Buck Showalter as a hire. And let's get down to the positives and the negatives when it comes to Buck Showalter, okay? Positives. Experience to a T. There's no one that has more experience in the game of baseball that is of a report candidate than Buck Showalter. Concerns. Buck Showalter has been notorious in the past for being rather stubborn, someone that is by no means analytically driven, and has also made very controversial moves during his time, including the notorious 2016 postseason with the Orioles in regards to not bringing Zach Britton in. Again, we're not going to get on that tangent. Every manager makes mistakes. The same can be said with Kevin Cash, who's one of the best in the game right now for the Tampa Bay Rays in regards to Blake Snell in the World Series last year. So mistakes happen, and they're always going to be amplified when it's playoff time. But Buck has had his ups and downs. There's no denying that. He has never won it all. Do I think that winning it all means absolutely anything in regards to the search? No, I do not. The amount of times that I see comments from people that say, "Oh, I don't want Buck. He's old and he's never won a World Series," or "I don't want this guy. He's inexperienced. He hasn't won anything." I'm sorry. Has Gabe Kapler won a World Series, the best manager in the NL this year? Has Kevin Cash ever won a World Series, the best manager in the AL? Has Francona, the legend manager for Cleveland for years and years on end, ever won it, at least in recent years? Has someone like literally the best managers in the game today, so many of them have yet to even win a World Series. So to go out your way and think that, if you don't win a World Series, it's not an option, I just think that's ridiculous. I really do. Like, you got to get yourself somewhere first, okay? Winning a World Series doesn't happen overnight. There are so many amazing players and managers that never get to win a World Series, but it wasn't for a lack of effort. So I completely disagree with that nonsense notion that just because you haven't won a damn World Series, that you're not a good fit. I think that's blasphemy, is what I think. So shout out all those comments. I think they're absolutely outrageous, okay? That's my take on that. Regarding Buck again, though, if Buck comes in a hypothetical where he hires if he hires with the Mets and is in a position where he's going to be adaptive with Billy and the front office and his coaching staff and will not be stubborn with certain decisions and really the outlook on what the front office and everyone envisions the lineup to be in 2021, he's going to be fine. And I don't see how Buck would be hired by the Mets without there being a full understanding, a full cooperation that this is a team effort here. This goes so much more beyond a managerial position. And I think people don't understand that enough. When you look at a manager, do they have impact? Of course they do. But it suggests that a manager solely impacts everything about a team, the roster configuration, the lineup, and game decisions is a fallacy as well. Front offices nowadays have more of an impact than you could ever imagine. And when you look at, I think a prime example is someone like Dusty Baker, and even to a certain extent with the Braves now with Snicker, because the Braves changing their system and actually, adapting the shifting method halfway through the season helped them out so much, and they've been more analytically ingrained in recent years. And also, when it comes to Dusty and the Astros, why did the Astros pick Dusty Baker as their manager after parting ways with AJ Hinch because of the cheating scandal? It's because, one, they wanted a veteran, someone that's done everything but win it all, just like Buck, but also someone that can come in and just handle the clubhouse, discipline them well, and not overstep anyone's toes. Just know how to make proper in-game decisions, but not do anything extensive. Just really be a placeholder, if you will, for a core group that was built up through this front office and through the prior coaching staff. That's exactly where I see the Mets going down the route with someone like Buck. I think Buck makes plenty sense if they're focusing on the short term with him and also focusing on winning now and wanting someone that can really control the clubhouse and have everyone on the same page, but not overstep their boundaries, not make too many controversial decisions. That's where Buck makes sense to me. And that's why I think that for many reasons outside of what we talked about, why Buck is the favorite right now. So again, if the Mets are focusing more long-term managerial wise, they're not going to go with Buck Showalter. But if the Mets are focused on the short term, then it's Buck or bust. That's how it feels, at least. I'm not saying that that's what I personally want. I'm just telling you I'm reading the room, right? No, I'm reading the writing on the wall. I've finally started to read it. I'm actually opening the book instead of looking at the cover. That's what I'm unraveling to this point. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this process goes. It looks like Buck is leaning away from Steve Cohen. Of course, when you have an owner that wants a certain guy, it's hard to believe that they're not going to get that guy. I know that Billy knows that far too well with all that he dealt with Artie Moreno. I hope that for this case, that's the right decision, however, because Artie's known for not making the proper decisions. Steve hasn't been perfect, but I definitely trust in Steve Cohen, no less. But I think another big question, too, and then we'll get on to plenty of questions here in the chat, including a donation. Thank you so much for the support, folks. Help us get 300 likes and help us get 12K subs if you haven't already. A big question here is if the Mets do say go down the Buck Showalter route, is it at all possible to bring in one of the other guys of consideration as a bench coach or a different part of the coaching staff? I don't think it's impossible, but it feels very unlikely. And it's really frustrating that the Oakland A's have to be doing this managerial search. I got to be honest with you, because if that wasn't happening, I think that there would be a greater likelihood of maybe the Mets potentially bringing in a Joe Espada or a Matt Quatraro. But lateral moves are also very rare. They do not happen in baseball too often, whether it's front office or even coaching. Bob Geren was kind of, a little bit of a surprise, but that was based on personal preference from wanting to go to, closer to home to be with his family in LA, knowing he's a San Diego native. So I would absolutely love it if the Mets put themselves in a position where if they hire Buck Showalter, that they hire someone to be the next man up from Buck. Just like how Joe Espada is the next man up from Dusty Baker right now for the Astros, I would absolutely love that the Mets do that same philosophy with Buck. Assuming that you're going to have Buck for 2+ years, 2-3 years, whatever it may be, assuming that you have success, have someone behind him that can really lead the way as your next long-term manager and to get to learn from someone who has endless amount of experience outside of what they've already learned with other managers in front of them, respectively, but with someone like Buck. I'm in favor of that. Granderson, I don't see happening after Buck. And this is another thing, folks. I don't see Beltran either. I don't see those things happening because I think the Mets still want their bench coach, like that next man up. They want it to be someone that still has experience coaching-wise. I don't think that they want to go down a route of someone that has zero coaching experience. I'll be surprised. Nothing's impossible. I will say that, but I will be very surprised if that happened at this point in time. With just everything that we're learning, all the new information that's coming out with, yes, I'm perfectly fine with really any of these options for the Mets. I'm excited for whoever they go after, but more than anything, I truly hope that the Mets adopt the philosophy that if you hire Buck Showalter, that you have your next man up behind him as your bench coach or someone in your coaching staff that can really, help groom him, help lead the way, to one Buck's time with the Mets would be done. Because Buck's not here for a long time. He's here for a fun time. Buck wants to win now. He's never won in his career. He's trying to do with the Mets. He's trying to do a service, not just to Mets fans and, the community in Queens, but also himself. The guy, he's 66. He's not getting any younger. He's done everything but win at the biggest stage of them all. He wants to do that. This is an opportunity for him to do it. So if he comes in the position for the Mets, don't expect to be long-term, obviously. Expect to be short-term. And hopefully the Mets build a coaching staff around him that could also have that next man up behind him. That's something that I really, really am in favor of if they go down the Buck route, which it seems like that they will. But with that being said, folks, everybody in the chat right now, I want to know everyone's current thoughts. If you're watching the live stream live, shout out RP, great member of the channel. How you doing, my man? Guys, how do you feel about Buck Showalter being the next manager of the New York Mets? Do you think he's the best fit? Let me know. I'm going to address a couple donations while you guys are filling in that. TJ, thank you so much for the $2 donation. Do I think Buck would push away from the shift? No, I don't think Buck would push away from the shift because he doesn't have an option. Mets had great success with the shift last year. I expect them to continue it next year. by no means do I see the Mets hiring Buck if he will be stubborn and going against either shifts or, things that are analytically ingrained that need to be part of today's game, not just for the Mets, but universally are already a part of. So I don't see Buck getting hired unless, Mets have a full understanding with Buck, respectively, that there's cooperation constantly involved from the front office to the coaching staff. If that doesn't happen, I don't see how he's hired with what Billy Epler's mindset is. TJ, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Let's see. Allie, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Oh, Allie, oh my man, thank you so much for the $5. We've been talking. That's exactly what that was. Allie, shout out to you, my friend. Looking forward to talking to you more tomorrow. Really, really does mean a lot for the donation. Thank you so much for the support, my friend. Really, really does mean a lot. Happy to see you in here. Let's see. Buck for 2 years with Joe. I would love that, but I don't see how they get Joe as bench coach. I don't, because Joe's in a spot with Dusty right now where Joe's basically the heir apparent to Dusty Baker, right? I don't see how that would happen. Paul, yeah, feel free to send me that on Twitter. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is Ron Washington a candidate? No. It has not been reported that Ron Washington is of consideration. Okay, seems like a good amount of you guys would like Bucks. Some of you won't. And again, I respect everyone's opinion here. Give me 1 second. Got to blow my nose quick, folks. Like I said, I'm under the weather. So continue. Let me know your thoughts, and then we'll just open things up to a Q&A before we get out of here. And we're back. Let's see, that didn't take long. No, I don't have COVID. Guys, let's not forget that there are endless illnesses outside of COVID. I feel like a lot of you guys are forgetting that. Passing bomb and during a lockout? No. Okay. Let's get into a Q&A, folks. Give me 1 second. Beautiful. All right, Q&A time, folks. I'll be answering whatever questions, comments, or concerns you guys have for a little bit before I get out of here. Again, thank you all so much, everyone that's been chiming in. Appreciate everyone's support. Thank you all so much, guys. When we're getting closer to 200 likes, folks, help us get there by the end of the stream if we can't get a 300. I know we'll get a 300 at some point because you guys are amazing. So thank you so much for that in advance. How did I become a Mets fan? I've always been a Mets fan. My dad's originally from Queens. I was not a fan of baseball really growing up. I actually started following the Mets daily halfway through the 2015 season because my cousin told me to watch the series against the Nationals. I said, why should I watch this? He said, if the Mets win the series, then they're leading the division for the first time in a while. So he said, okay, watched it, loved it. Wilmer Flores situation happened. Yoenis Cespedes, that run in 2015. That was my first true introduction as a fan, watching game by game. I haven't looked back since, clearly. So yeah, I'm fairly new, but I definitely have picked up the pace very quick. Wish I followed, since I was younger, because I was in 2015. I was 15 at the time, so to give you context. But definitely, I've just been in love with the Mets ever since, even though that they've caused me plenty of frustration in my short tenure as a diehard fan. Granny man, I would love Granderson, but I just don't think they're going to go down the route for him to be a bench coach. I don't think they want people with no experience like that. Good for me. I didn't see the choke of 6, 7, or 8. Steven, if you would like to become a member, and again, nothing really changes with memberships besides having the ability to constantly get shout outs and also the emojis. But if you'd like to become a member, if you just go on the YouTube app, there should be a button that says join on my channel. Just click that and it gives you the membership options. And thank you so much in advance if you do just that. You have plenty of time to be miserable with the Mets. I do. I'm thankful that I haven't been through hell and back. Like I know a lot of Mets fans have. Why is Mike Sosha considered? He isn't considered, Richard, so I'm not sure where you're getting that from. Oh, Dominic, I've watched the 86 video. I filled myself in on all the Mets history I've missed. At least a good portion of it. I got into the Mets when I moved to New York State in 2019. I wish I'd seen them since I was a kid, ups and downs. Yeah, again, but you're here now, though, and you know they have a bright future, so that's all that matters, right? I don't mind Buck, but if they have David as a bench coach, so he can learn from. Yeah, again, I don't see David Wright becoming bench coach. Respectfully, I don't. I don't think that's the route they want to go down. Not right now, at least. The Marlins are making great moves so far this offseason and will be really competitive next season, I think, and at least could be a lot more tight next year. I don't think the Marlins are going to be a playoff team next year, but they're definitely going to be more competitive, and they're always a thorn in the Mets' side. So regardless on if they're, 30 games below 500 or, looming at 500, they're always going to be a pain for the Mets. Ozzy, yeah, I don't see that happening. Thoughts on Bochy? Bochy's comfortable with his position in front office with San Francisco. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I don't think he's going to manage for a team ever again in his career. I think he's done. I did go to Shea. I went to Shea. I want to say at least once. I went to a game when I was younger with my family. I don't, as a kid, you naturally go to events and stuff with your family, your parents, but unfortunately, I didn't get to experience it the way that I would have liked to if I was older. But yes, I have been to Shea at least once, and I'm grateful for that. Once is better than nothing, right? Let's see. My parents moved to Flushing in 84. I saw Shea Stadium when I was 12 and went to the first game in 84 season. Been a fan since. Awesome, Juan. Love that. Do I think Freeman becomes a Yankee? No, I do not. How many current MLB ball? Even though I will say that as much as it kill me to see Freddie in pinstripes, I think I can deal with it knowing that he's not with a rival in the Braves. As much as it would kill me to see him there, because I love Freddie Freeman, it kills me as much as it is that he's a Brave. I think I can handle it more if he's a Yankee than he is a Brave, knowing the amount of times that the Mets see the Braves every year. So that's my outlook on it. But I don't think he's going to land with the Yankees though. Chris Bryant, KB could definitely go to the Phillies if he doesn't go to the Mets. Phillies are right up there as a potential destination because they have the money to throw at him. He has connections. He's close with Bryce Harper, both Las Vegas natives. Harper, also Scott Bort's client that got him that huge contract. Wouldn't surprise me, but I do think the Mets will stay in on him significantly. Tim Bogart? Yeah, I don't see that happening. Losing Freeman would send shockwaves through division. Oh, absolutely. Freeman's the current Chipper, but Freeman, there's a huge difference between him and Chipper. It was so easy to hate Chipper from everything that I've seen because I didn't experience it live as it happened a lot. But it's like impossible to hate Freddie. Rangers are running NY. No denying that one, Andrew. Hope you're doing well. How about Alfonso as bench or hitting coach? Don't see that happening, Andrew. Are you getting a black jersey even though yes, I will be getting a black jersey even though I wish that they stayed true to the black jerseys that they wore this year. I don't know why they had to change it up just to piss off fans, including yourself right here. But it is what it is. Vitamin C and zinc. I got to take my vitamin C. I took it yesterday. I'll take it again. Allie, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Shout out to my friend again in the chat. Really appreciate that. I think it'll be Espada or Showalter since Mad Max prefers Bucks. Buck, he is clearly the first choice as of now, in my opinion. I tend to agree with you on that one. I do for sure. I think that those are the top two. And it wasn't a coincidence why I had the Buck and Espada next to each other and in the video. It's not a coincidence why I did a video solely on them two. I think that they're towards the top of the list for sure. Appreciate the donation, my friend. What are they doing to the black jerseys? They just changed them up a little bit. That they're not exactly the same as the ones they wore this year, and it's annoying. That's all I can really say. So I think the Mets go after Matt Boyd, considering that they have reportedly been in on him. Yes. What do I think of McNeil? I think McNeil is perfectly capable of bouncing back next year and dominating, just being upwards of 300 hitter again. Whether that's what the Mets or not has yet to be seen. I think that there is very much a possibility of McNeil being back and an everyday starter next year at second base. There's a possibility of him being a utility player, but I think that the Mets find a area where they can get McNeil traded in a really, really good, really good price, where they're by no means are they dumping him, where they can get a huge, significant asset or assets back. They will do it. But it'll also be contingent on what else they do in the infield. If they don't do anything else in the infield, I don't see McNeil going anywhere personally. Denny Duffy, is he an option? He could be. He hasn't been a reported one, but he is a name that could come up as a potential depth pick, like a potential six starter lawn man out of the bullpen, if you will, that I could see them consider. Kind of like a Rich Hill replacement. You would call up KB, then Beatty, then get KB. Well, if it makes you feel any better for my Beatty stands out there, including myself, according to my good friend Joe DeMeo, I'm going to have him on the channel to talk prospects for sure. But in his prospect rankings that came out today, make sure to check them out on SNY. He has the estimated time of arrival at the bigs for Brett Beatty to be this year. He thinks that Brett Beatty is going to get his first taste of MLB experience this season, regardless on if it's just a couple at bats or if it's extended. He does think that Beatty will make some type of impact in 2022. We just don't know how significant. I don't agree with Lindor choking McNeil at all. I 100% agree with you on that one. I don't agree with him doing that, but McNeil was in the wrong as well for not being smart about the defensive alignment. Lindor literally hates a shift like more than anyone, yet he does it because he knows that that's going to give the team success. That's what they have to do. So for McNeil to be out of shift alignment purposely, being stubborn, that's on him. That's on him not following, the message of what needs to be done there defensively. But again, I don't agree with Lindor there. He cannot be doing that. That shit cannot be tolerated in the clubhouse again. I hope it never happens. But McNeil was no saint in that situation either. Let me put it that way. Elliot, thank you so much for the $2 donation, my friend. Lawn manager that knows how to handle the bullpen. Agreed. Agree with that one. Thank you for the donation again, Elliot. Love the vids and the discussion worry LFGM. LFGM to you, my friend. Hype in the chat to D for the $2 donation. Really appreciate that. Thank you all so much for the donations and the support, folks. And yeah, McNeil does have a temper issue. And man, if he can get over that hump, I think it's going to do wonders for him. I really do. But I don't know if he will. He seems like the type where he's always going to have a temperament. If we don't get KB, who would be my next choice bat? I don't really have one right now, but I'm definitely going to talk about other options in future videos. So stay tuned for them. Where will Conforto go? I got Conforto going to Seattle or Chicago, but that being with the White Sox. I think it's going to be the Mariners or the White Sox. At least I hope. I hope he goes to a team that I could still follow and enjoy as a Michael Conforto lover. It'll really, if he goes to the Phillies, I will lose my mind. Is VR gone? He might return. It doesn't feel likely, but anything can happen. There isn't room for him on the roster right now, however. You want Showalter as your manager, Warrior? Well, it seems like everything's in line for that to come to fruition versus other options. So I hope for your sake that makes you happy. Again, nothing's guaranteed on who's going to be the next manager, but Buck looks like the front runner, the early favorite, at least as of now. Where do I see Schwarber landing? I think Schwarber stays with the Red Sox, and if he doesn't stay with them, I think he goes to the Phillies, which pisses me off because I don't want to see that man as much as we did last year, even though he got traded because he hit 10 home runs against us in 2021. Don't need to see Schwarber in the division, but I think it almost feels inevitable. I would love it if Conforto goes to Boston, But I think that they're going to get Seiya Suzuki and leave it at that. Because Seiya Suzuki follows only the Boston Red Sox on Instagram, for what it's worth, in case you guys aren't aware about that. Trevor Story will be a Met. No, he will not. Wouldn't mind Schwarber with the Mets. I wouldn't mind Schwarber with the Mets either. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't. I don't. The more I think about it, I don't think the Mets are going to spend big on a DH because they have in-house options, including rookies potentially, that can actually make a significant impact, like potentially a Mark Vientos. Darren, thank you for the kind words as always, my man. Again, I hope you feel better. Mets are interviewing Bob Geren. Yes, they are. Dom DH. I don't think Dom's going to be on the Mets in 2022. That's my personal take. Anything's possible, but I'm not betting on it right now. Top 3 Mets killers over the past 20 years. I mean, coming from a fan that has been religiously following them for 20 years, my initial gut reaction would easily be Chipper. Outside of Chipper, I would potentially look at, I always think Nationals. Which National stands out the most to me though? I know that this was too short term, but from my stance, as Paul DeJong, yes, but that's died off a little bit this year. But DeJong, yes, he's a huge Met killer. I hate him. I would honestly say, somewhat of more recent years, Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy, pardon my French, bitch slapped the Mets left and right after he parted with the Mets and went to the Nationals. That man, and also, I know he was only with the Braves for 1 year, but Josh Donaldson absolutely murdered the Mets. You look at the Ryan Howards, the Chase Utleys, the Jimmy Rollins. Those guys killed it too. So there's plenty. There's plenty. Also, I hate Jason Worth. I don't know what his numbers were against the Mets. I'm sure they weren't to the same significance as others, but hated Jason Worth. Oh, someone just said it in the chat. Shout out to Anthony. He gets it. He feels the vibes. Rendon was up there too. Yeah, I was beyond relieved to see him gone. Mets killer for the next 10 years, Austin Riley. That's okay. We'll just walk him. We'll walk him. Dontrell Willis. Max Schrock. Worthless. You guys are funny. We're going to get out of here in a couple minutes, though, folks. So, again, thank you all so much that have been chiming in the live stream. Make sure to like and subscribe. Help us get to 300 likes at some point in the live stream on replay. Whenever you guys are watching this, always appreciate it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this segment. Like I said, more great content coming on the channel per usual. I'm hoping to have a video out tomorrow or very soon at least, and more great content throughout the week. And yeah, help us get 12K subs as usual, folks. Always appreciate it. I'll take a couple more questions though before we do wrap things up here. Isaac, $2 donation. I want a manager whose resume can bypass stats if needed. Okay, I can understand that. Again, thank you so much for the donation. Appreciate that. Pat Burrell, glad he brought him up. Yep, I was forgetting about him. Yep, big one for sure. Sean Manaea, you are a New York Met. I would love that. I'm a big fan of Sean Manaea, the big southpaw from Oakland. Who are some of my favorite current non-Mets players? Shohei Ohtani, just obvious. And it's not because he's like amazing, but it's just how he does everything. Like just Ohtani's swing in itself is just, I love everything about it. Huge Ohtani fan. I have a bias with the White Sox because White Sox are my AL team, but Yo Moncada, Luis Robert or Robert, however you pronounce his name, because I always mix them up. Really, really big fan of them. Blue Jays, Bo Bichette is just electric. I mean, there's so many players I'm a fan of. Thinking about some more though. I do really like Tatis. I'm a big fan of Tatis. He gets a little overwhelming for me at times, but I'm a big fan of his. Wander Franco, I'm quickly falling in love with. Let's think some more. Pitchers, there's a lot of big pitchers I'm a big fan of. Really a big Lucas Giolito fan. Always liked him, even when he was a prospect with the Nationals. Bullpen, Blake Trinan was just getting to witness him plenty for the Dodgers this year. Just absolutely disgusting. Just his movement's ridiculous. Really like Trinan out of the pen, as I do many others, but he's just one that first popped in my head. Other pitcher, players, Jonathan India, really liked him as well for the Reds. Same thing could really be said with always been a Joey Votto fan, just always respected the hell out of him. There's a lot of players that I like. A lot of players. And also India just stood out so much in his rookie year. What a stud he was. And he grew up a diehard Mets fan, so I respect the hell out of him for that. And to show out the way he did in his first games in Citi Field, that's pretty sick. Ali, thank you so much again for another $5. Really appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much. I didn't chat for Ali. I didn't want the Mets to resign Baez, but in retrospect, the thumbs down fiasco probably played a role in negotiations for the front office. Ali, really appreciate that donation. Thank you so much. I actually have to disagree with you on this one, however, and here's why. It was made abundantly clear that Sandy Alderson and Steve Cohen were nothing short of impressed by Baez holding himself accountable after that situation, saying, no, it wasn't Pilar, no, it wasn't Lindor, no, it wasn't McCann, it wasn't anyone's fault but mine. I did not mean for the thumbs down to be a negative towards the fans. It was just something to try to rally the group together, but it came off wrong, and I'm aware of that, and it came off wrong and how I spoke about it in my interview, and I'm at fault for that. They beyond appreciate the fact of how blunt he was, and Sandy really fell for him. Same with Steve, with just how well he played in New York. So I really don't think the thumbs down was much of a factor in that. I think the factors between Baez not staying with the Mets was, one, Baez wanting the type of contract where he could opt out potentially after a couple of years. I think that was an X factor. And also the knowing that the Mets were looking for guys that could bring more stability with each plate appearance. Baez is electric, has huge pop in his bat, but there's no denying that he doesn't have consistency to the level of what Billy Epler wants. I think Billy Epler was by far the biggest factor. I don't think it was Sandy or Steve. I think if Sandy was controlling baseball ops, Javi Baez would be a New York Met right now. Elliot, thank you so much for the $2 donation. I always love the stream, I'm assuming you said. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Elliot. Happy to chat to you. And no, the Mets are not hiring any manager this week. They're hoping to have it at the earliest by Friday next week. Do not expect to hire this week, folks. But with that being said, that is going to wrap up this segment, this live stream, talking about all the managerial candidates and all the latest news regarding the Mets managerial search. How's it going, Vin? Sorry, Vin, we're getting out of here now. But again, if you watch this live on replay, thank you so much for the support, folks. Thank you all so much for the donations and the kind words. It always does mean a lot to me. We will be back on the channel hopefully soon with content tomorrow and in the coming days. Hopefully, maybe another live stream this week, depending on what's happening. If any breaking news happens with the Mets, of course, we'll cover it right away. And if anything of significance comes out with the search further that I feel needs to be addressed in either its own video or live stream, we will, of course, do another update on the candidates as well. So thank you all so much again for the support. Love and appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. And like I said, just stay tuned for more great content here on WardyNYM. Help us get to 12K subs. Check out the previous video. Check out the previous video to the previous video and the Chris Bryant video if you haven't already. And thank you all again, folks. I'll talk to you soon. Awesome live stream. Not surprised. And it's all because of you guys. And make sure to enter for the giveaway. Giveaway winners will be announced Friday in an individual video or part of a live stream. So stay tuned for that. Keep those notifications on. Have a great night, folks. And of course, let's go Mets. See you later.